Hello, everyone, and welcome. And I can already see some comments in the chat coming through. So thank you so much for being on time. And I'd like to welcome you officially to the CLI ALPMA Innovation and Legal Tech Week 2021 live program. My name is Karen Finch, and I'm the host of this session, which is entitled The Future of Work, From Hands to Heads to Hearts. I'm also the CEO of Legally Yours, which is an online automated marketplace that connects clients to fixed fee and value-based pricing lawyers across Australia. I'm also the Vice President of Alta and a legal tech editor for global ideas sharing platform called Idea Spies. So as you may have been able to tell and pick up, I'm a real passionate ambassador of the progressive law movement and love all things to do with innovation and legal tech. So I'm really excited to be facilitating this session and this amazing panel today. So before we get started, in the spirit of reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So this session, we have 90 minutes together, and our presenters, where we have Tom Dreyfus, who's the CEO and co-founder of Joseph, Sarah L. Atom, the General Manager of August, Louise Ferris, the Chief People Officer at McCulloch Robertson, and Martine Barclay, who is the Principal Psychotherapist at Redefine Your Edge, will be discussing the future of legal work and how it can be reshaped, from using technology to replace the manual aspect of legal work, so the hands, working collaboratively and across multidisciplinary teams to enable lawyers to work beyond just their own individual minds, so the heads, and how to move the profession forward to think more about their purpose, value, people and culture in the future, so moving towards the hearts. So this session will consist of 4 mini presentations followed by an interactive Q&A panel discussion. So on to our very first mini presentation. Tom Dreyfus is the CEO and co-founder of Joseph, a no-code legal automation platform that makes bot building, workflow and document automation accessible to every legal professional. Before Joseph, Tom was a top-tier corporate litigator, a lecturer at Melbourne Law School and an associate at the High Court of Australia. He speaks and writes regularly on legal technology and innovation and holds an LLM from Columbia Law School focusing on legal data analytics. Tom, take it away.
Thanks so much for the kind introduction, Karen, and hi everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you talking about the future of legal work. I just love the idea that we're talking about the future of work at a conference being run fully virtually with participants from all around Australia and the world. I find the experience of being here and sharing this with all of you a pretty inspirational one, especially in the context of this session. I'm going to share my screen now and get started, but I actually feel like I should probably start this session with a little bit of a confession. Hold on just a second. There we go. I'm just about the least likely person to be talking to you all about the future of legal work. Until a few years ago, my eyes were firmly on the way things used to be. I went to Melbourne Law School. I started my career as a commercial litigator in a top-tier firm, and I loved the law. I loved spending hours poring over cases and legislation, writing long letters and briefing barristers. I did not love discovery and document review, but we will definitely get to that later. From the firm, I went to work as an associate at the High Court of Australia for a judge who, in keeping with the theme of today's session, hand wrote absolutely everything. And I remember thinking to myself, this could be me one day. I'll go to the bar, I'll become a judge, and in 40 years, I too could be handwriting judgments. The path from there to founding and becoming the CEO of a fast-growing legal tech company is a story for another day, but I offer up my early career as part of this session to say this. No matter the path you've been on, no matter what you might think you love or even know you're good at, the future of legal work holds opportunities that are unimaginable today. But since we're here to imagine that future, I want to talk about why and how the way legal professionals work, how we create and deliver our work product, how we use our hands is changing. And I'm going to do this by talking first about clients, then about lawyers, then about technology, and finally about the immense opportunity that a different future presents for access to justice. Let's start with the why. And the first perspective I want to bring is the clients, because unfortunately, far too often, it's an unhappy one. I genuinely believe that perhaps the biggest change in the way we think about doing legal work today to the way we thought about it even 5 years ago is how central clients have become to this conversation. I know that seems like a bit of an odd thing to say because, we'd all be out of a job without clients, but I still genuinely think it's true. And it's borne out by our research at Joseph. Here's what we know clients want from their lawyers. They want speed, they want convenience, they want expert knowledge, they want their lawyers to be experts, and they want friendly service. The problem here is that they're not always getting what they want, sometimes not even close. And so here we have reason number one. The future of work will be different because clients are demanding that the legal services we deliver improve and adapt to a digital world. The second perspective I wanted to bring is the lawyers. And I'm not going to rehash some of the horror stories from my own early career or the countless other young lawyers who shared theirs with me. Instead, I want to focus on what the future of the legal profession itself, law students, tell me they want from their work. I'm really fortunate to spend time with law students in Australia and around the world when their law schools use Joseph to teach them about automation and legal design and computational law. And what these students tell me is that the work they want to do is intellectually challenging, that it's high value and strategic. One of the things that blows me away is a remarkable number of them focus on wanting to meet their future clients wherever they are and on being empowered to deliver a service that their clients want and need. But this vision of being a legal professional, it simply doesn't align with the work that many young lawyers find themselves doing. Instead, we spend our time clicking through documents, proofreading, pulling together briefs. And we know that law firms struggle with retention. We also know that building culture and setting up people to thrive is what sets the best organizations apart. And so here we have reason number two. The future of legal work will be different because legal professionals want their work to be more meaningful, sustainable, and fulfilling. And because the technology exists, never has this been more true than in the midst of a pandemic, to make that happen. And so now we get to what I think of as the hard part, the third perspective, that of the technologist looking in at legal services. So much of what we do as lawyers can be automated. Sometimes I look at the McKinsey study that estimated this headline figure at 25%. And I think that it's nowhere near ambitious enough. From taking instructions to reviewing and drafting documents, from finding that needle in a haystack case to compiling a brief, today's technology has the capacity to augment and, yes, replace much of what lawyers do. I've seen what happens when law firms and legal teams embrace the emerging technologies available to them. When they implement workflow and document automation, when they adopt technology-assisted document review, when they lay the foundations for their work in a smart case or matter management system, they have more time. They spend more time on what matters. They generate the data they need to continuously improve. And above all, they deliver a better service to their clients. And so here is reason number three in two parts. The future of legal work will be different because technology, first, has the capacity to automate and replace much of what lawyers do. And second, because as you've already heard in relation to clients and lawyers, it should. And you'll hear later about some of the other skills that legal professionals will have the opportunity, the capacity to develop in a workplace in which the most mundane and repetitive tasks have been automated. The final point I want to make is pure advocacy. So just forgive me my soapbox for a minute. I want, and I think we should all want, what we as lawyers do with our hands, the reason we do it, our North Star, to look different. When 5 billion people worldwide can't access the legal services they need, in Australia, when of the 8 million people who face a legal problem each year, only half will get help. And when we have at least some of the means at our disposal to solve these problems in the form of cheap, accessible and scalable technology, I think we have an obligation to build a better future for legal work. One in which clients are satisfied, in which lawyers find meaning, in which technology is adopted and adapted to provide for everyone who needs legal help. I said at the beginning of this presentation that I am an unlikely CEO of a legal tech company. I think that's true, but I think that unlikeliness says something about how rapidly the legal industry is changing. And I'm excited to be building a future in which, instead of handwriting judgments, I'm empowering lawyers and legal professionals with the tools they need to work better, to deliver better services to their clients, and ultimately to increase everyone's access to justice. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Tom. That was incredible. And I can't let you go without asking this question. And I know it's something that you get asked all the time. And it's something that's always raised whenever we do a technology themed event. But a lot of students, law students in particular, will ask me and still raise this question about, will automation replace then all of the lawyers' work? So I have to give you this opportunity to address that question.
And I think it's the right question. I think it's such an important one. I think that, if you confront the question head on, there are many, many things that lawyers and other legal professionals do today that can and will be automated, that will be replaced by technology. But ultimately, the way that I think about it is technology and automation will augment lawyers. It will, and I know this sounds trite, it will give them superpowers. People talk about bionic lawyers. It's a phrase that I really like. I don't think it's a good thing to replace lawyers. That isn't the goal. I don't think it should be anyone's goal. I do think it's a good thing that lawyers will spend less time on low value, repetitive, mundane work and more time connecting with clients and focusing on the things that they need to find meaning in their work. The only other thing I will say, and I think it's missed a little bit in this conversation, but I think it's important, and I hope we talk about it later, is that there are so many new roles being created in the future of legal work. Roles with titles like legal designer or legal engineer or legal operations consultant are not careers we were talking about in the legal industry 5 years ago. They probably weren't even careers we were talking about 2 years ago. And so sure, we might have fewer of what we think of as a traditional lawyer, but the way in which they practice and the other opportunities to participate and contribute to the legal industry, I genuinely think more than make up for it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tom. And it kind of feeds into some of the comments that we've had placed in the chat during your presentation, particularly from David, who said, my view has always been, and based on feedback, is if you can't provide good service and communication, the client doesn't care how experienced you are. They will always focus on the good or bad service and communication. So 100%, I think that sort of feeds into that topic. Thank you so much, Tom. You can take a break before I call you back for our Q&A session at the end. So on to our next presenter. We have Sarah Al-Atom from August. So Sarah is the General Manager at August, an independent digital consultancy headquartered in Melbourne with offices in the United Kingdom and Canada. August specialises in bespoke product development and market growth within the health and legal tech sectors. Despite the inherent sophistication of these spaces, the team creates experiences that are accessible, inspiring and effective. As a distinguished fellow at the Centre for Legal Innovation, Sarah is interested in the intersection of technology, design thinking and multidisciplinary teams within the legal sector, with a view to creating better results and relationships for legal practitioners and clients alike. And Tom, I will ask if you could stop sharing your screen and I'll get Sarah to share hers and take it away with her presentation.
Thanks so much, Karen, and hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. I'm just about to start sharing my screen and run through a few slides with you. So I'll just get that going and we should be right to go. All right, wonderful. So what does the future of work in the legal profession look like if we are moving from working individually to working more collaboratively with other specialists and working in multidisciplinary teams? For the last 12 months, as Karen mentioned, I have been working on a research project through CLI as part of my fellowship. I have been exploring whether client problems could be solved better where lawyers are working in multidisciplinary teams. If you've been attending any of the sessions this week, you probably would have heard multidisciplinary teams coming up quite a bit, and that's so exciting to hear as well. Today, I'm going to cover off 3 main areas and leave you with some considerations if you want to get started in this space. The first area I'll talk about is what do we mean when we talk about multidisciplinary teams? I'll also talk about why working this way is important and it's part of our future. And finally, what to expect if you plan to get started. So first up, what do we mean by multidisciplinary teams? I sometimes like to use the analogy of a wildlife sanctuary. There's lots of different species, they're all beautiful, coexisting, and they're playing to their strengths. Whether you're working in or leading a multidisciplinary team, it is your challenge to find a way to align the team through purpose, values, language, or even all 3, so that the team communicates effectively and can bring out the best in each other. A multidisciplinary approach in the legal profession enables teams to solve different problems and different types of problems for their clients, respond to client needs more effectively as well. In the commercial space, we're seeing work such as large-scale e-discovery, legal strategy and transformation within legal departments, as well as the implementation of technology and change management processes. This work goes beyond providing legal advice. It speaks to an entire legal department, and in some cases, it can be a full business solution. Disciplines we're seeing within the teams that exist in the profession and are starting to emerge include technologists, analysts, designers, data specialists, change experts, and of course, lawyers. This is a potent combination of expertise coming together in different ways and ultimately changing the offering of what legal teams can provide. Collaborating with different expertise on a regular basis also opens up an opportunity for you to establish new ways of working and challenge convention. A technologist might be used to working with agile principles. They might build their work according to 2-week sprints. But a designer might be used to a much more fluid approach, preferring a longer concept time and rounds of feedback. As a lawyer, you might be much more used to daily updates. Bringing in different disciplines to create a multidisciplinary team within a law firm creates a space for you to establish new systems and principles. What is going to work best for the team so that you can create the most value for your clients? It's essential that everyone in the multidisciplinary team is heading in the same direction and aligned on why they are there. I'll touch more on the why in a moment. You may have read some of David Rock and Heidi Grant's work in the Harvard Business Review. They talk about how diverse teams outperform homogenous teams overall in business, including when the financial performance of these teams is measured. When you're working with people who have different expertise and background to you, your brain really needs to sharpen its performance and question your assumptions. It's also been found that diverse teams tend to focus more on the facts, and there is an inherent uncertainty that helps draw out people's curiosity within these teams. Research has also demonstrated that diverse teams can be more resilient than homogenous teams because of their ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Let's think about this in a legal setting. These strengths of questioning assumptions, applying curiosity and being adaptable, they are all traits that will be important to lawyers in the future and building stronger relationships with clients. When you are able to solve different problems for your clients, not solely focus on legal advice or view the problem as only a legal problem, you can create more value for your clients and you can change the conversation you have with them. If you're familiar with the work of Blair Enns, you might have heard about this wonderful concept he uses in sales. It's called the polite battle for control. When you can change the conversation you have with clients, you can change where the control sits in those business development conversations. A multidisciplinary offering responds to the constantly evolving demands that clients are putting on lawyers. This type of team structure helps you shift the focus from a problem being lawyer-centric to one that is client-centric. It enables the other disciplines within that multidisciplinary team to really flourish and add value to the client relationship by being able to offer a more holistic solution and expertise. And of course, bringing in different skill sets opens up exciting revenue opportunities by creating more value. You can challenge convention with this. You can experiment with pricing models you haven't tried before, considering pricing for long-term engagements or even client partnerships. Building a multidisciplinary team takes time. Building a high-performing one takes even longer. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And if you've ever run a marathon, you know that you need to gradually build up your training and your time on legs. Rather than wake up one day next week and decide you're moving to a multidisciplinary team structure, I think as a starting point, it is more helpful to identify what attributes you can be encouraging within your existing team, within yourself, and in your hiring, so that as you move the different pieces into position of this type of structure, you're setting yourself up for success. From my research, curiosity is the most dominant attribute found within multidisciplinary teams. In addition to this, a willingness to be adaptable and to be part of a team that is aligned through purpose or values was also present. If you're leading this type of team or want to bring in this change, you must ensure you either have or are prepared to build the types of systems and rituals that encourage curiosity and collaboration. Curiosity is not a checkbox on your interview scorecard or your performance management report for your team. It is a deep-seated trait that can permeate through your team if you have created the environment for it to flourish. Finally, I want to leave you with a story from the National Basketball Association. If you're a basketball fan, you may have heard of Doc Rivers. He's currently the NBA coach for the Philadelphia 76ers, and he was previously the head coach for the Boston Celtics. When he first started at the Celtics, the team was really struggling. In the 2006-2007 season, they had the worst record in the league. They were terrible. Rivers also had 3 all-stars in the team. One was already in the team and he had 2 new recruits, Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. And he needed to ensure that they worked well with the rest of the team. So Rivers made a really bold move and he taught the team the philosophy of Ubuntu. It's a philosophy that focuses on the whole of team, not just individuals. Ubuntu is a Zulu phrase with origins in African philosophy. It means a person is a person through others. Essentially, I can only be my best when you are your best. Rivers started this philosophy with the rookie players and he engaged them to help spread and align this through the team. Ubuntu became a key pillar of the Boston Celtics. They used the phrase in everyday life. It was heard countless times in practice sessions, in transit, while they were getting dinner together, you name it, they adopted it. In 2008, this commitment paid off. The Boston Celtics took out the NBA championship against Kobe Bryant's LA Lakers. It's a huge achievement. Ubuntu permeated every element of their being as a team. I leave you with this story because it's a powerful example of how critical it is to align values, purpose, and direction within a team when you are trying to build a new structure.
Thank you, Sarah. That was absolutely incredible, and what a gorgeous story to end on. I think it really brings that point home. We've had some amazing sort of comments happening in the chat, and Courtney actually has raised a good point. So she says she loves the idea of multidisciplinary teams, but she's interested to find out where our legal technologists are found. Are they graduates ready to go in this role, or do small firms look to big law technologists looking for a change? So just in your sort of experience with it, where do you think, you know, we're going to be pulling those resources, and will it take time, I guess, for the university graduates to kind of move that have maybe that combination of law and technology into these roles? What's your view?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at the moment we're seeing a lot of lawyers move into the technology space, so they do have that legal experience, and they're starting to add to their skill set, which is fantastic. I think what we're also seeing though is law schools are bringing in technology subjects into law degrees, and that's super exciting because it means that people will learn during their degree what it's like to combine these skill sets and how to use them to the best of their ability. And so over time, I think as we'll see those new graduates come through, that will evolve and change and be a really exciting prospect for these types of teams.
I really love it. And I've, you know, having had the privilege of being parts of these different sessions previously, I know that technologists speak a very different language to the way that lawyers talk. You know, lawyers speak in context in terms of risk. They want things 100%, you know, spot on correct. Technologists talk in the language of, you know, the new, and it's creative, and it might not be quite there yet, but it's coming. So being able to combine those two skill sets is pretty incredible. Catherine's also just said she absolutely loves the fact that we're talking about diversity of skills as well as diversity of background, because both are really important, which is wonderful. And I think we've just had a comment from Cheryl who said she would like to see these courses provided to paralegals. Are paralegal schools doing it? Because that would be someone she would hire. So I wonder, do you know anything sort of in relation to that, Sarah? Have you heard anything on that end, or?
Specifically around paralegals, no, but I think having the knowledge of being able to do that work and undertake that work and then combine it with either design thinking or technology and really starting to look at what those expertise look like in coming together, I think that's a fantastic opportunity there for sure.
Absolutely. Now, I had one question for you before you go. So it sounds like a lot of the larger organisations can build multidisciplinary teams because they've got the scale and the capital. But what about the smaller and the mid-sized tiered firms? So how do they sort of get started when perhaps they don't have that scale and capital beneath them?
Yeah, so capital and hiring capability is a huge factor for the large organisations. But I think for smaller organisations or mid-sized firms, I would focus on one thing, and it's really becoming literate in this area. Read ferociously. It will mean that you learn the game, and I think that's a real asset in this space as it's starting to grow. You can absolutely build your knowledge around the support systems that foster collaboration and mindset, and also thinking about multidisciplinary structures. And I'm more than happy to, I've got a bunch of articles and resources that I've found really insightful. So I'm also happy to share those if anyone is keen to read up on them. I can definitely spread them around. So.
And that's it. That's incredible, because I think it's a point worth noting that, you know, it can be for any size. It's not
absolutely
talking about, at that end, because like you say, you can start small and start on one theme and build it out from there. And Catherine again has made another comment about smaller firms can bring in new skills on a temporary basis as and when projects require. So that's even another really creative way to look at doing it. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Sure.
You can rest and relax. Your presentation's over. We'll pull you back for our Q&A, and that's just a reminder for our attendees attendees as well, we are doing that Q&A at the end. So if you think of questions as they come up, please pop them in the Q&A and we will get to those questions at the end of the presentation section of today. So on to our next presenter, we have Louise Ferris. Louise is an expert in the area of human resources management and provides strategic advice across a broad range of people and culture activities. Louise has worked in the legal industry for over 25 years and has built a reputation for understanding the business of law and balancing a high-performance environment with a supportive and growth mindset. She has a strong interest in dealing with issues through a practical lens and has implemented a number of effective initiatives across the business to drive a sustainable and engaged workforce. Louise also has a particular passion in the area of mental health and wellness and was recognised for her work in 2016 as the winner of the Open Minds Mental Health Week for large employers, as well as achieving gold level recognition across the organisation for mental health first aid. More recently, Louise was awarded HR Professional of the Year through Lawyers Weekly in 2019. So we're so excited to have you here, Louise, and it's over to you to take away your presentation.
Great, thank you, Karen, and thank you to my fellow panelists who have certainly laid a fantastic groundwork for me. I'm going to come at things a little bit differently, given my lens is in a mid-tier firm, mid-sized firm. I'm probably going to try and tell you a couple of stories or some of examples of where we have brought together multidisciplinary teams and how we are trying to create that culture that certainly Sarah's talked about with thriving and getting the best out of our people. So I am also about to share my screen. So hopefully that is up, and I start with, as I said, some storytelling that I'll take you through. But I guess I come at this presentation from, as I said, my lens, where when we were asked the question as the panel, how will lawyers continue to add value? My lens certainly came at things from the perspective of, well, how do we create that environment where people want to create that value? So it's having an environment where that culture of high performers are constantly looking to grow, challenge themselves, but with the support and I guess mutual respect and that diverse or that opportunity for diverse thought will be a bit of a theme through this is there. So that openness to challenge and fail and get things wrong is the best environment that we are striving to create. So as I said, I started thinking at the point of not just lawyers wanting to add value, but creating the environment where they do want to add value. And I'll start with a quote and I'll finish my presentation with a quote. Both are from HBR. And this one sort of starts around those, what makes a team and what makes a team tick. And I guess over the last 40 years, what we've seen, and this quote comes from The Secrets of Great Teamwork, where it talks about teams today are certainly far more diverse, dispersed, digital and dynamic than we've seen. Certainly when studies of teams first started to come through, they faced new hurdles. Their success still hinges on core sets of fundamentals, group collaboration certainly being one of them. So those basic team effectivenesses that were identified in the 1970s, for instance, still remain true in many ways. It's the ideally looking at things like personalities, attitudes, behavioural styles of team members. So a lot of that still remains relevant these days. And those needs to thrive still remain, as I said. And they were providing teams with a compelling direction, a strong structure, and a supportive context. So that was identified then. That still absolutely remains particularly critical now to team success. I guess what this article then went on to say is that the further requirements demand more attention than ever is around what can be the most corrosive of problems, where there is that us versus them, or certainly in high performance environments where there's that individual first before team or me before firm, which again will come through in some of my stories that I talk about. So that us versus them thinking that can create into, and to overcome that, they've identified in this article that the fourth critical condition is a shared mindset, so that shared purpose. And I guess the first story I wanted to share with you is about expanding how we have worked to create that shared mindset in order to be able to create multidisciplinary teams, bring in our experts, bring in our technologists, bring in people, our lawyers, to be able to deliver exactly what Tom spoke about around low-level, fast legal work, but still adding value. So as I said, I'll give you that example in a moment. But for me, we about 5 years ago, started on the journey of creating an environment where we've got that shared mindset, and we've been working very much in creating our purpose statement, which on this slide you'll see is up on the corner of Unlocking Success Together, and the 3 important parts that connect there, our clients, our colleagues, and our community. That all fits together very well in our purpose, but it is centered around what we call is our employee experience. So it is around making sure that we create an environment, and our business services strategy, our firm strategy links very clearly with this employee experience. And as I said, I wanted to give you a bit of a short insight into how we went about creating this. And it's been now in place for about 5 years, and it centres around these 5 key areas that it creates an environment where people clearly know where they fit. So ensuring that they've got that clear performance criteria, they've got that clear reporting lines, that they understand where they fit in that picture, how they're contributing. And this has been a really important part, certainly over the last couple of years, around ensuring that strategically we're communicating our firm goals, but that can be very clearly drilled down into a team and then into an individual around their involvement and how they contribute that. The value, very clearly there, that they're doing, that they're feeling like they're being valued for their contribution. Growth, again, that challenge and that ability to develop themselves in that identified career path, but importantly with that support from others. So importantly, again, in that environment where it's respecting each other, respecting diverse thoughts and skills, are a very important part, and of course having fun doing it. So whilst there's lots of detail in that employee experience that I've just sort of skimmed through, it is the basis of everything we do, right from an onboarding and attraction perspective, right through to our check-ins, etc., and our learning and development criteria. That is the centre, and you see that everywhere as you move across the organisation. And it has become a common language. I think Sarah picked up on certainly common language for all of us to talk through, and it is making sure that if something is not working, or there is an issue to challenge on, or if something has not been delivered the way that we want, we always go back to this as our starting point to look at, well, where is that relationship and where is something in this employee experience not working. So as I said, I centered that piece of the employee experience, and then draw your attention, as I said, to that purpose statement that also has evolved in parallel to this employee experience. That purpose statement really came out of, if I can say, an environment where there was that us versus them, that situation where we had teams certainly not being open to working with each other, willing to work with each other, and certainly setting a bit of a competitive environment. And one of the examples I'll take you through in a moment really has meant that the value that can be delivered from a certain aspect of the business based around that framework that we are all here to unlock success together has been something that's been of great success to all of us in this firm. So as I said, having that clarity for our employees, having the involvement and support is one of the most important concepts now for lawyers, and certainly in this current age of technology disruption and uncertainty. This employee experience has created certainly a bit of consistency and support around how we conduct ourselves on a day-to-day basis from that perspective. So as I said, I wanted to come at this discussion first of all picking up on those important aspects that both Sarah and Tom have talked about setting the environment or that culture around common approach to everyone, regardless of where they are in the business. We're all adding value to the end client journey piece, and that we all have an opportunity to grow, and that we were all, as I said, contributing to that bigger picture. That's a very important, as I said, I guess, basis for what I want to take you through now. So as I said, we've talked a lot about multidisciplinary teams, and we've talked a lot about bringing aspects of the business together to deliver for clients, and Tom spoke about that. Delivering, the future of work has changed, where in some situations there are work that is of high volume, low margin, that firms are either, it's being replaced people that used to do it is being replaced with technology, or it's an unsatisfactory environment for people to grow and have a sustainable, satisfying career. The two examples I want to take you through is the Q Rider one, which is the loan scheme that we've been part of as part of the COVID response of the Queensland government. It is work that we've never done before. It's low level, fast loans that are provided to businesses who are in trouble, essentially. So this is very, very quick, fast turnaround document production that needs to be done very quickly. And of course, though, in the environment that we were in, it was uncertain. Our clients needed that care and attention, certainly the empathy. So that heart piece was very important for our clients to have through this piece. Now, we had literally 7 days to turn this around. The Queensland government came to us and said, we can't do it all. We need you to do it all. We need you to do a part of it, and we need to do it for this certain level of cost and this certain margin. So someone that has spoken on this conference and is that ferocious reader that Sarah spoke about, Kim Treasure, is certainly an expert in being able to pull these experts together. And so she was able to pull multidisciplinary teams from across the business services perspective. Our lawyers, our representatives, paralegals were very heavily involved in this. And they built very quickly a technology solution to be able to deliver for the government, which had certain parameters, for our clients, but also at a cost level and a margin perspective that enabled our paralegals right through to partners to be able to have communication, contact and support of these clients as they were going through a very difficult time. So there was lots of constraints, but we were able to certainly get through that and deliver in an area of work that we've never done before in a very satisfactory time frame, but also a fantastic growth across multidisciplinary teams to deliver for that client. So that is certainly something that if you ever want to talk to Kim Treasure, as I said, our CEO, she can certainly take you through a lot more detail of that. But it's a great example of where multidisciplinary teams can come together and deliver their areas of expertise in for that client. The second example I guess I wanted to give you, and this is probably where I've referred to in the business support areas, where our culture 5 years ago had a team of individual teams or experts in the technology and our HR and our marketing. And for a business, we were all fighting for attention, essentially. And again, this came very much from a need to add value internally. So if I take that client to be our partners and our lawyers, we as an organisation needed to make sure that we were adding value to them, and we needed to stop and recognise the role that we played in their client experience. And we spent a lot of time, both from our learning and development programs, but also setting that strategy to actually do something very basic, and you all would have heard about it, and that is around that client journey mapping. And we sat for hours on end making sure that every one of our business support services knew exactly the role that they played in that business client journey, and how important what they did, how they contributed to the end factor, and why they needed to make sure that they were doing what they needed to do and support the other person to do what they needed to do. So it wasn't about HR being better than marketing or marketing being better than IT or fighting for that attention. It was about making sure that we all stepped up and we all pulled ourselves onto the podium together. So this client journey map and this ethos of unlocking success together and that mindset of the team succeeds, individuals prosper, has been something that has come right through our leadership learning over the last 5 years. And we are just starting to see common language, that common purpose, and then the outcome for the client being something that we are really reaping the rewards for. And I guess I'm conscious of time, and I've come at this with a couple of stories, but I also wanted to end with one more, I guess, example of where internally in a law firm, exactly what Sarah and Tom have been highlighting already is playing out in the environment where in 2018, I stood up at the partner retreat and we spoke about not only the skill set, but the mindset of what a partner at that stage, because they needed to set the tone if we wanted to be in 2022, and we're now 1 year off that. But as a leadership group, they needed to start to set the tone, make the investment, understand themselves and their own development, what the skills of the future lawyer look like. And it's good to see that some of my prediction is coming off. But this was the the slide that I presented. So not taking away absolutely on that legal expertise, that BD and relationship skill set, the project management and digital literacy. So I certainly spoke about those skill set coming to the forefront, but the mindset being very important, and that curiosity, that adaptability, that resilience and tolerance is also what Sarah's already spoken about. And that is the mindset of a lawyer going forward. And I think that's where the diversity piece that Sarah began to speak about, and I reinforce that is that diversity inclusion work that we do fits very nicely into the evolution of the future of the work. And I think diversity inclusion, I'll end on this quote, and again from another HBR article, where diversity inclusion can be a bit of a buzzword now, and people are starting to lose the impact. But the importance though of the activity around that strategy is on the foundation of mutual respect. And as I said, I started off with that mutual respect of each other in order to formulate a good culture, in order to deliver multidisciplinary teams and successes to clients, but also for the future of the way that we work. So on that note, Karen,
Thank you
I'll
so
finish
much,
my storytelling.
Thank you. And I absolutely, it's just fascinating stuff. And look, your predictions are coming true. I think it's just incredible. And I'm just getting this overwhelming sense of feeling that I've had some flashbacks to when I finished my articles, which now I'm showing my age, which was obviously many, many years ago. And I remember during that article period, I never saw a client. I was pretty much stuck in a darkened room, filing through dusty files and papers, and wasn't really, shown much. And I still remember a comment being made to me very much in my early days of graduating as a lawyer, was that, better do what we say, otherwise there's plenty to replace you. And now I'm looking at all these things that are being talked about the value and about, the education and who we are. And really, and I know this is going to on-flow to what Martine's presenting on, but coming to that purpose and value of who we are as people, both with our clients, but also within our firms. And it's just a beautiful thing coming through. So thank you so much. I just wanted to, before I ask you a question, Louise, is just to point out Rob's comment, who mentioned before about the 3 innovation topics that are now core to the Flinders Law degree, which involves law students alongside other law students from other disciplines in diverse teams. So lots of unis are incorporating that design thinking. And I think, again, look how far, I know that there is still so much work for us to do as a profession. But I think I just wanted to take this moment just to acknowledge how far we have certainly come, even in just 5 years, in terms of we're talking about it. We're talking about multidisciplinary teams, and we're talking about value and all these wonderful concepts. So thank you. Louise, before I let you go, I just did have one quick question that I wanted to ask you. So disruption and change impact and the succession in law firms. Talk me a little bit how that sort of affects. So how does disruption and change impact succession in law firms, do you think?
Yeah, I think it comes back to one point that you just made, the way that you were working through your articles or the environment. And so a lot of those leaders are now looking towards the end part of their career. And I think if I take that mutual respect concept and making sure that as an organisation and as a profession, we are showing that respect of people coming into the profession, but also going out of the profession. It is recognising that this is an anxious time for them. They've been high performers, they've been used to an environment, and it is changing, and they have skill sets that and mindsets that doesn't come as easily to others. So I think it's continuously not being afraid to have that discussion with that mutual respect, but also encouraging them to look for where they can continue to add value in the second half of their career. And that can often that source of where that comes from is not always from them. It's encouraging things like reverse mentoring, getting them to get access to our graduate recruitment and graduate interviews. I think for them, it's such a rich environment now where they're hearing what's important to the different generations that are coming through in our organisation. So for us, or for me, I guess, and I don't profess to have all the answers, but it is encouraging them to listen and have that mutual respect for different people while they figure out their own succession piece and to continue to add value that they deserve.
So wonderful to hear. Thank you so much, Louise. Thank you for all that information. And you can now go ahead and relax, and we'll call you back in about 15 minutes for the Q&A. So we are over to our final presenter, which is Martine Barclay. So Martine is the principal and founder of Redefine Your Edge, a Sydney-based wellbeing therapy coaching practice that supports professionals to achieve career success and peace of mind. So prior to founding Redefine Your Edge, Martine worked in international professional service firms, including law, supporting practitioners to achieve their career goals sustainably. Martine is a master's qualified counsellor and psychotherapist and an organisational coach with specialist training in sleep, anxiety and career-related topics. For the past 10 years, Martine has presented on personal leadership for the New South Wales College of Law in their 50 plus new partner program. And with that, Martine, over to you for our final presentation.
That's great. Thank you, Karen. I'll just share my screen and then we'll be good to go. So what I'd like to say, I think, while I'm just getting this up for everybody, is that when we think about the heart, I used to laugh when I was working in law firms, because I used to say to people, why are you why did you decide to become a lawyer? And they said, well, you know, the idea of justice and all that other thing, those other things. And then I said, oh, and why commercial law? And they said, oh, because there's no emotion in that. I'd rather do commercial law than family law. And I used to find that quite interesting, because I've never not found emotion in corporate environments as well. So it's an interesting thing. I know family law is, but it's quite interesting to see that. So let me just maximize this for you. Okay, so great. Let's start. So why is this important? Because for many years it hasn't been. For many years you could rely on your skill set, you could rely on your connections, and you could rely on just practicing what you loved. Well, the truth is that just as technology and the way that law is working, so is people who are joining the workforce. Their expectations are changing too, particularly as we're working longer and we're expected to do more. And so really the why is because if you don't, you're going to get left behind if you don't engage with your heart at work. But also it's going to be a differentiator for you going forward, because we know that the work of law is highly relational, very dependent on managing those relationships. And we know that clients are bombarded with options that aren't always yours every single day. And the more senior you get, or the more noticed you are for your area of practice, the more competition wants to get into that space. And also the more there are more people knocking on their door to take the work away that you've actually won. So engaging with the heart enables you to build a relationship that is much stickier than what we would have had in the past or expected in the past. So the good news is, what I'm here to share with you is that everybody can do it. You know, you don't need a special degree. You don't need a certain number of PQE. You've all got what you need in order to engage with your heart, and to engage that in a way that makes you an effective legal practitioner, but also a more sustainable practitioner too. Because if you're not careful, you could burn out, which is a very real prospect, or you could stand to lose a lot of different things in your life that's not just your career. I've worked with lawyers who have realized that they work like the clappers, which is good, but then once they get married, once they have a family, they try and figure out how to fit it all in, and they need to work a little bit differently, because those hours are no longer just available for work. They need to be there for family and other responsibilities too. So it's something worth looking at if you want to be a bit more efficient with your time. And yes, we're talking about empathy, and the research is growing in this space, but certainly what we know about empathy now is that there are 3 levels to it. There's the cognitive level, which all of us get, in terms of recognizing that somebody else is experiencing something and we can take a perspective on that and use that information for when we negotiate or influence. The deeper level is the emotional empathy, and that's when you're in it with somebody, and usually that is through a shared experience that you might have with them, and there is an emotional connection. And if you think to all the friends and the people that you work really well with, it's quite possible that that's what you've got, an emotional connection where there's interpersonal relationships. But what we're talking about here in terms of heart is we're looking at the third level of empathy. We're looking at how to be compassionate. And what that actually means is, how do you understand, feel, and act so that in the scene of suffering of the other, you can actually do something to take that away. Now, in terms of suffering, that's a relative term, and it could be 1 through to 10 if you were looking at it on a scale. But essentially, as a legal practitioner, you are looking to see how and what problems might be on the horizon for your clients and look to proactively address them for them. And what's important in this process is that there isn't necessarily a sense that you're going to get something from it. You're doing it because the other needs it. And so you're looking at the whole person or the whole organization. And so that is a proactive approach that you might use if you were, for example, like in one of the firms I worked in, people had to read the Fin Review, and on a Friday morning over coffee, everybody had to have one article that they could turn to and talk to clients about if they were to phone them in an hour's time. So it's about, how do you show the client that you're thinking about them and you might have a way forward in terms of what you're doing with them. Now you can say, oh yeah, I know how to do that, but actually it's not as easy as you think, particularly when lawyers are taught to compartmentalize their thinking and to keep everything very clearly boxed, for want of a better word. The way that we need to do this is that we need to become our own best friend. Now, many lawyers that I work with have a very harsh internal critic because they're striving for perfection, which doesn't actually exist. It is a nirvana that keeps getting further and further away for people. But in terms of being your own best friend, listening to that internal critic and asking yourself, is that how you would talk to your best friend? Is that how you would respond to them if they were actually in the situation that you're in? Because for most people, that internal critic is not motivating, inspiring, or helpful in any way. And it also takes up a lot of energy. And so when we think about being your own best friend, the reason we're doing that is so that we can have a lot of compassion for ourselves, so that we in turn can give it to other people. Now, I've met lots of different lawyers over the years, and I can let you know that the most successful, if you were to think about the judges, the barristers, and the lawyers that you work with, the ones who are successful in all dimensions, they have an element of self-compassion. They don't hold themselves hostage when they've made a mistake. They take the learnings and they move forward. They're able to put others first, have a vision for themselves, give others hope, all these different criteria. And I'm encouraging you to have a look at those who influence you most, how much of these qualities they might have, because it might also be an indication that it's time to change your greater influences in your career if you don't see them working with heart. So when you say, well, how can I develop it? Here are some suggestions. What I would say to you, though, is that as a lawyer, you are rewarded for your intellect, for your knowledge, and it's easy to spend a lot of time in your brain. And we often forget that we actually have a body too. And our body is also sending lots of information, both out and in, while we're going about our day. So if you can look at this as a checklist and go, yes, I do that, I do that, I do that, but actually I'm not getting the returns. I'm still feeling a bit empty. I don't feel connected myself. Well, then I'd encourage you to have a look at, where do you feel it in your body? And just start slowly and start building that up, because it's possible that over time, the connection between the head and the body hasn't stayed connected for whatever reason. You know, it could be a strategy of getting through lots of different work, and that strategy worked, and now it's no longer working for you. What I would say, though, is that for people who connect with their heart, connect with other people with their heart too. So we know that people in romantic relationships, when they're in the same room together, their heart rate synchronizes. And so people can actually smell and feel when you are working with heart or you're not. So it can't be faked, is basically what I'm letting you know. So you're wasting your time if you're going through a checklist and you don't feel it too. So make good use of your time and engage with yourself as your best friend, and then you can find it easier to share that with other people too. And so really, these are my contact details, which I'm happy to have you contact me and ask me some more questions. But I'd like to share a story with you, which happened to me a little while ago. A very experienced practitioner came to see me. He came to see me for sleep, actually. But as we unfolded everything, it turned out that he was desperately lonely. He had a significant practice. He was doing well. He had great clients. But he said, you know what? I don't feel connected. And when we talked it through, part of it was because he had such high standards for himself and everybody else. And don't get me wrong, high standards are a good thing. But when they prevent you from sharing your heart and other parts of you of who you are, then it can be harmful over the long term. So it's not for sissies. It's really for brave, courageous leaders who are prepared to share their heart. But I would caution you to choose where and when and how you do it. So thank you.
Oh, just beautiful. Thank you so much, Martine. So
Pleasure,
much amazing information contained in there. And I loved that final slide in terms of all the ways that we can go about it. I did have a question for you, and it's a little bit of throwing a cat amongst the pigeons kind of question. So it sounds like, and I'm putting on my crusty old partner hat here, so go with me. So, you know, what would you say to the partner in a law firm who says, well, you know, leading with the heart sounds like it could eat up a lot of time. So how can we do it efficiently?
Well, kindness doesn't cost, right? And you still need to be pleasant, and you still need to be professional and have relationships. So I would just encourage people to do it a little bit differently. I would also say that if you don't engage with many people and now need to find time to do that, know that it'll pay off in spades later on. It's a long-term gain. Because people I've found are like elephants. They never forget when you help them get out of a jam. And so you just don't know when you're going to need it. And also, you know, you're going to make mistakes in your career. And it's good to have some of that compassion debits in the bank so that you can call on them when you do make mistakes, because it's going to be an inevitability.
I love it. And it probably referenced back to the first comment that we had by David at the start of this session, which talks about clients also remember when your communication was pretty terrible and they didn't feel valued and didn't feel listened to. So just it all kind of ties together. I will invite you to stop sharing your screen, Martine, and I will invite the rest of the panelists to actually come back and turn their cameras on. And we're going to start with a Q&A. So welcome back, everybody. Nice to see all your faces again. And thank you so much. I've obviously had the privilege of seeing all those presentations prior to this today, but watching them come through, I mean, the themes from that are just beautiful, and you can feel that energy. And again, I just wanted to emphasize just how far and appreciate we've come in terms of a profession that we're actually having a session talking about these wonderful concepts into the future, which is just amazing. So Katie has actually said it would be great to hear thoughts on how to reframe what success means, changing the focus from commercial sex to a more holistic concept, and how can you change firms' reward systems to do this? So perhaps maybe Martine, that's a question I'll hand to you.
Thank you, Karen. It's hard because money talks, and I'll be honest with you, that's what it's, at the end of the day, it does. But what I would say is you can be absolutely financially successful in a practice and be compassionate. And what you'll find is that the intangibles will be really quite strong. So one of my clients, we work together. He was a new partner. He's not so much anymore. But he was trying to figure out how to fit everything in. He figured out how to be more compassionate with his staff, and he rearranged things. He made some changes around diary management, when he went out to meet clients and various other things. And the engagement in his team skyrocketed, so much so that he was asked to put a presentation together for all the other partners across the firm, because he was obviously doing something right. His retention was good, and he was inundated with lawyers who wanted to work with him from outside the firm. So people notice. They might not let you know there and then, but people are, they're keeping a little bit of a black book in their head as to who they want to work with and why. And I think, you can't underestimate it.
Love it. Great answer. Catherine asks, hands, heads and hearts is a lot to manage within one person or one team. So how do we balance these various imperatives? And I might start with you, Louise, and throw that out to Sarah after that for answer.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think there's two aspects that I'll talk about. I think it starts with ensuring your culture has that mutual respect and not tolerating anything outside of that, and being fiercely protective of that, because I think that just lays a really strong foundation for a number of other things. The other things are symbols, and when I say that, it's the indicators, and again, certainly not wanting to say it's perfect, because we're perfect imperfections, and that's great. But making sure that the symbols for things like on the employee experience, fun is just as big as contribute or value. That having that sense of fun, that ability to get to know people, celebrate success, people to form those, what Martine's talked about, those healthy relationships, both internally but also as part of your community. So whether that be giving back or at home, in those community is just as big as our clients and colleagues. And again, I think it's those symbols of equal weight, if that's so, is where I'd come from.
Love it. And Sarah, did you want to weigh in on this as well? Because I guess you then add that hands, heads, hands, hearts into a multidisciplinary team as well. What would you suggest of how you can balance those?
Yeah, I think adding to Louise's comments, because I think they're all incredibly valid and important, I think what I would also consider is this type of change and building this type of structure is not possible just by one person. It has to be a team effort, and you have to have those open and sometimes difficult conversations with other leaders in the team in order to know that you're all on the same page. And I think one of the elements of a really good culture is that it doesn't happen naturally. It is very much designed and cultivated and talked about openly, sometimes because you need to catch a behavior early in order to say, no, we don't want that in our culture, and this is why. And I think really having those open conversations as a group, especially as a leadership group, is super important. And even if someone who wants to be involved in that change isn't part of that leadership group, find ways to bring them in, because they will also help be an advocate for what you're trying to achieve as well.
I love it. And I love Emma's comment that she placed in the chat where she said, people won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And it's just so very true. And you can even apply that in the multidisciplinary teams. I'm actually going to head a question over to you, Tom, if you'd like to unmute. So in your presentation, you discussed how technology is an enabler within the legal industry, not a replacement of lawyers. So we get that. But are there differences across law firms and in-house legal teams and the community legal sector as well, with respect to the impact and the potential of technology in that regard?
It's a good question. I mean, there's so much in there. And I'm going to do like the classic politicians thing and go back to an earlier question before I answer that question. Just making sure that's okay.
You can do it.
I know, but I promise we'll get back to it. I spent like the last 45 minutes imagining a law firm in which, Sarah was creating the multidisciplinary teams and Louise was ensuring we had common purpose and Martine was making sure we were all being kind to one another. I was like, that's where I wanted to work when I came out of uni. And so I think, I don't know, I love the vision that I think we're creating for what legal teams and legal organizations could look like. The one question I want to pick up on was Katie, the second half of Katie's earlier question, which was how you can change firms' reward systems. It's, and I only wanted to offer this because, and Louise, keen to hear your thoughts on this as well. one of the things I've seen law firms especially do pretty well in this space, and it seems so simple, is just have a billing code for things like innovation. One of the American firms we work with actually pays its lawyers directly their charge out rate when they do work against the innovation billing code. So the more, and wrap your head around that. If you're a partner with $1,000 an hour charge out rate, the law firm's going to pay you $1,000 for each hour you spend on eligible innovation activities under that billing code. Like that. Anyway, that's extreme, but I do think there are ways that we can play around with the existing systems and structures to encourage people to spend more time on the things that we've all been talking about today, putting to one side what we think about the billable hour in the first place.
I'm glad you said that.
Okay, I know. Okay, back to your question though. Law firms, and we touched on this already, because they are, profit focused. The focus that at least we see when it comes to technology is how I can use technology to increase the margins in my work. And I know that maybe, I don't know, we can unpack that a little bit further, but really underlying a lot of what I see, that's the driver. In-house teams, it looks different. It's about saving time. It might be the same technology, but it's about saving time. We're thinking about headcount, and unfortunately, too many in-house teams are still seen as cost centers in the business. They're not recognized for the value they create. And so executives in those organizations are always encouraging in-house teams to save time, reduce headcount, reduce spend. Community legal centers, again, might be using the same technology, but they're doing it to scale because they want to do, more with less. I actually think one of the most amazing things that I'm seeing in terms of the technologies that are out there is how the same technology can be used to achieve very, very different ends if it's deployed in a really thoughtful way. And you can imagine that something like, we see, give one example of something like e-signatures. It's not the most exciting example, but I've seen it used in law firms to sort of save a whole lot of time on a fixed cost project, and therefore just increase the margin of the project. In-house teams to create a better client experience that saves the whole business time. And I've even seen it rolled out in CLCs where their clients are using their phones for absolutely everything. And e-signature means that they can sign stuff more easily. So bit of a rambling answer, but hopefully touched on a few important things.
No, absolutely. And I can't let you sort of leave that point by saying, because obviously you sit within the tech space. So what are you seeing as being the technological advancements as having the biggest impact on the way that lawyers work right now, taking it out from those hands and then flowing it on to more looking at our purpose?
I'm totally biased here, but the technologies that I see having the biggest impact are the ones that legal professionals can use themselves. So the ones that aren't so technical that IT has to get involved and do everything for them. It's the ones on which they can get kind of their hands dirty. E-signature tools with great UX is a good example. No code, workflow, document automation tools, another great example. I think that's the overarching theme that I see in the most impactful legal technologies.
I love it. Thank you. Great answer. And yeah, good to know, because we are talking all about the future. Sarah, I have a question for you now. So you talked a lot about obviously the building of the multidisciplinary teams, but how do you go actually recruiting those teams, and where do you sort of start realistically, and then how long does it take to build those teams? Can you kind of delve a little bit more into that?
Sure. So I think there's a few parts to that. I'll start with where do you start? So I would consider looking at how are you going to align this team, because bringing in different perspectives, different experience means that common language, that common aspect is really important. And so thinking about values-based hiring is an area that I think is really important to be looking to in the future. We have done a lot of reading at August in particular and applied some of Laszlo Bock's thinking. He's the former head of people at Google. He wrote a wonderful book called Work Rules, and he's written a lot on values-based hiring. And I think I would look at how you can standardize part of that hiring process to see, are you bringing in the right people from the beginning to ensure that you're aligned on a common purpose and those values. From there, I would think about where do you go to find these different disciplines? And there is very much a piece around going to the communities of the technology space, the design space, looking at where data analysts are chatting and meeting up. And that also means not just putting job advertisements on LinkedIn, for example, but really looking at what makes a good developer and what makes a good designer, and what type of designer is going to work really well in the team that I'm trying to build. So building your own education, but then also building the language and the offering that a designer or a developer or an analyst might be really interested to come and see and explore with you. And then I think, Karen, you asked about how long something like this takes. I recently watched a wonderful presentation by Kim Goodwin. She's a design and product specialist out of the US, and she does a lot of work in driving change in different types of organizations. And she talks a lot about hierarchical organizations and different types of team structures. And she says that this type of change, which is pretty big, to bring in a different type of team structure, give yourself at least 3 to 5 years. It is very much an ultra marathon, probably longer than a marathon, but you really need to give yourself the space to have the conversations, to get people okay with the change, and then to start in small wins, driving that change forward as well.
Oh, I really love that. And I love that value-based hiring. And I wonder if we will ever get to, I guess, a place where we're looking at, values-based entry into law degrees as well, where we're actually looking at, well, it's not just a TER score or a, ATR score. It's actually looking at, do you have the right personality fit to be within this profession, and sort of feeding into what Martine and Louise were talking about as well, in terms of that leading with your heart, which is wonderful. Well, I've got my next question I'm actually going to throw to Martine and Louise. So listen up. So what do you say to the lawyer out there who feels that their career is going really well and they don't need to look at any of this? So, I'm sort of nearing that end, and I know, Louise, you made reference to that respect thing, but they're thinking, well, I've done everything I can. I'm at the top of my game. I don't need to really think about any of this heart kind of, soft kind of stuff. Why should they adopt this process if nothing is broken? And yeah, I'll throw it out to you, Martine and Louise. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Or Martine,
shall I go first?
Yeah, you go first, Martine.
So I would say something's going to break, and I'm almost, I wouldn't say sure about it, but I would say 75 to 80% confident that something will break, because kindness is actually a natural solve for stress. So you're on the road to burnout if you don't engage with your heart, because you miss all the signs and warnings that are coming. Also, what I've found is, whilst you have a really good legal practice, there might be other things in your life that are not going very well at all. And actually, interestingly, some research has come out of Stanford to say that CEOs who are divorced are more expensive and less risk averse to the business. Go figure. Who knew? But the other thing I would say is that if things are going really well in the practice, chances are something is not going well somewhere else, whether it's health, relationships, family, and that's taking up energy which could otherwise be used towards building a practice or maintaining a healthy practice.
God, I love that. Interesting stats coming out there, isn't it? It's incredible. And I have to say, in my time, I have met a lot of, in particular, family law where their partners have been divorced. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, to see. Anyway, lots to think about. Louise, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, thank you. I guess my lens comes from probably many years of knowing that some assistance is needed, but getting the whole, I'm good, I'm fine, no HR needed here in this office. It was a plaque, I think, through the 2000s. I guess how I approach it, and I think I've had some success, is that I come at it from the perspective of they are at the top of the game, they're high performers, they're elite athletes. And I use that language when I sit and talk to them about their own next 25 years in practice or their next 15 years, whatever it may be, doing what they're doing. And like elite athletes, they have a coach or a trainer that is just looking for that 5%. Now that 5%, I absolutely agree, Martine, it is often in that quality of relationships. It's often in that sense of balance. It's in that proportionate response that often they're working on. But I come at that discussion with my successful partners often, or senior leaders, from that perspective of, well, like a professional athlete, they have a coach. Have you thought about, now it doesn't have to be a professional coach, it can be a mentor or a best friend or someone else, but who is assisting them work on that 5% every day that is keeping them at that level. So what's that saying? Catch more with honey than, anyway, that's been my approach, and I've had some success.
Yeah, absolutely. Good answer. I'm just reading Emma's comment. She's mentioned she's often thought that in the past, why lawyers succeed last and why lawyers don't. Is there an underlying personality and or values that create a better, more successful, sustainable lawyer longer term? Identifying this and then applying to students entering the market would assist, in particular the dropout rates early on. So Louise, I guess, you know, have you sort of seen, and Martine, a question for you as well, through the clients that you've worked for, is there a personality trait that you would say, I mean, Martine, would you say that's the ones that listen to their heart and kind of avoid that burnout? Or Louise, have you seen any of that?
In my experience, it is lawyers who are very clear as to why they go to work. Why do they get up in the morning? Why do they do the 15-hour days when they have to? You know, and they're also very clear with themselves around what those boundaries are and what they need to be. So they're good at managing boundaries, and they love what they do, and they really like their clients, and they're really connected to their clients. Sadly, what I think makes you a good law graduate at university is not necessarily makes you a good lawyer past 5 years of practicing. And actually, there's a metamorphosis, in my opinion, that needs to happen once a graduate is no longer a graduate. And, you know, you can get quite far without having a robust conversation, but at some point you have to take a stand on things. And sometimes that is the hardest I've found for my clients to do.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's probably a whole other session just in relation to looking at the different, you know, portion sectors of each, from law student to law graduate to early stage career to down the line. Absolutely. Louise, did you have any comments as well?
I think I'll just add a point that's already been spoken about, and my view is that I see those that are able to have quality relationships both at work, at home, with friends, with their clients, that genuinely invest in that time, where they show that openness, that curiosity, that respect. I think it's that ability to form relationships and maintain them, I think, is where I've started to see the differences.
Absolutely. And we've got a question from Mal, so we're sort of nearing our end. If you do have any questions, attendees, pop it in the Q&A and we'll be able to get to probably one more. Sarah, I think this is one Mal's aimed at you. So she would love to hear about the opportunities for the multidisciplinary teams to be formed across different organisations. And so she's talking there about what extra effort is needed here. So is it alignment, what benefits and collaboration, those types of things?
Yeah, great question, Mel. I'm glad you've asked it. I think there's a huge opportunity for this type of collaboration in building a multidisciplinary team between different organisations. And I think that's where the rituals and systems become really important, because it allows you to work out together, how are we going to decide what good is? What's our level of ambition? How do we work out just what our daily practices are? Like, how do we decide how to work together, and what methodologies do we use and what tools do we use? And I think through those conversations, it fills people with a level of confidence and reassurance that they're not just stepping into something they've never done before and they it's a blank canvas and what are they doing? But it's really thinking about, great, we're putting all these measures in place and all these catches in place as well, to know that if we have questions, this is what we do. If we have something to measure, this is how we'll measure it. And I think that sets people up for success as well. It's a great opportunity to start to build a framework around that.
And looking at organisations that share your values. I mean, I know something, because I sort of sit within the intersect of the client, so the startup ecosystem, and the individuals looking for legal services, and then the legal profession, and being able to kind of see that bridge and understanding, what they value. And that's really big within the startup world, I have to say, outside of law, is that they're all doing vision and values and mission statements and really getting to the core of what it is and how they want to build these companies. And then how do you align that? How do you get consultants to come in, and how do you that see it and will follow through on your vision and values? And it's from co-founders and all the rest. And I think as in the legal profession, it's equally applicable. Like, we have to really take time to really think about what are our individual vision, values, mission, like Martine said, and that probably then translates into more sustainable. You understand why you do what you do, and then also from the firm perspective, as Louise has delved into as well. Just lots to think about. It's just been incredible. Well, we have hit almost time. I just wanted to actually end with a comment that Frances has put in, where she said, from these presentations, I'm seeing openness and vulnerability in leadership as key to the future proofing of a team. Easier said than done in her experience, but an important goal nevertheless, and valuable for junior lawyers to look for in employers. And she thanked us for the wonderful discussion. So before we go, I'm actually going to put you all on the spot, and I'm going to ask Tom and then Sarah and then Louise and Martine, just for your final thoughts on a wrap up of, I guess, how you see the future of work, and a sort of a point that you would like to just leave the attendees with. Tom, to you.
Thanks for nothing. No, I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, for one thing, I'll thank everyone else who's been on the panel, because I've certainly learned a lot over the past hour or so. I think the thought that I come away from this with is that being a lawyer looks really different today than it did even when I started my career not that long ago, and that it's going to continue to evolve really, really quickly, whether that's driven by the changes from technology or from what clients are demanding or what lawyers expect in their work. And so, I don't know, I think the one way that we can all try to adapt and change and be effective in that environment is to kind of put a lid on the instinctive risk aversion that I think as lawyers we all have kind of built in, and embrace these opportunities to grow and try new things.
Oh, beautiful. And you've got me thinking about a billing code, even though I reject the idea of billing. I'm thinking about that because, you know what, let's just use what we've got. If people are so attached to billing, why don't we make them have that billing code for innovation? Absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Tom. And on behalf, while I've got you unmuted, thank you so much for your amazing presentation. I could honestly listen to you for hours on end. You're just so fantastic at what you do. So thank you. Sarah, over to you. What would you like to leave the audience with today in terms of the future of work?
I think I'm going to talk about just very briefly an aspect of the hiring part. And if you're looking to really build this team and just try it out, I think remembering that your first few hires in this space might be the mistakes that you need to make. And that's going to feel awful at the time, but it's going to pay off in the long run. And I often think of, there's a wonderful quote by Seneca that I read up on every now and then, and it says, don't stumble on what's behind you, or don't stumble on things behind you. And I think just know that these mishires will happen and it's okay. It doesn't mean the whole thing is a failure. Just keep moving forward with it.
Oh, absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Sarah. And again, thank you for your incredible presentation and for your contribution to this discussion. Lots to think about. Louise, over to you very quickly for your final.
Yeah, just quickly, I think don't stumble. I think take it as a stepping stone is the key. The statement we formed together through COVID was that as a firm, we're better together. And I think that's the future of work, when you recognise that you're better together, learning from each other, showing that respect, celebrating, whether that be internally with your clients, at home. People are just better together.
I love it. And I love that statement that you made about unlocking success together. So incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So I love it. And thank you for your wonderful contribution for today's discussion too, Louise. Martine, over to you for the final word before we end.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to say is understand why you do what you do. And if you don't take that as something being wrong, but maybe just you haven't found it yet. So take it as a thing to, figure out why you're doing it, because you're attracted to law for a reason. And, maybe you just haven't uncovered it yet. That's what I would say. And I've got some other kindness articles that I'm happy to forward as well, so they can be put with Sarah's as well around kindness, because I don't want people to think that compassion is a cop-out. It's not. Your best friend wouldn't let you sit on the couch and watch Netflix movies. Your best friend would say, get up and get going. So, just remember that.
Absolutely love it. Well, look, thank you, Martine. And that does end our
Pleasure.
session today. Thank you so much to everyone that tuned in. Thank you, Tom, Sarah, Louise, and Martine, to Terry and the team at CLI, and Fiona Croswell and the team at Altma for producing what is just not only this session, but an absolute incredible week of so much thought-provoking, insightful discussion. So thank you so much. Remember that I really encourage everyone to listen to the on-demand content. This session will be included in that, and it will be made available soon. So I'm Karen Finch. Thank you so much for joining me. I've had an absolute blast, and wish everyone a wonderful rest of your day. Good luck listening to everything else as well. Thank you.